Presented by Prize Picks. $100 match on your first deposit. Welcome to Light Years. Happy Free Agency Friday, everyone. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to hit that subscribe button. We're posting all pods on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, but we'd love to have you following along on every platform. Man, happy Free Agency Friday. We got some good news today. We might be doing this every day throughout the free agency period. But this morning, we got the news that Chris Paul intends to move back his guarantee date, his $30 million option, till Sunday, the 30th of June, which is the official start of free agency. So what does that mean? That means the Warriors are still hot and heavy looking for trades. By pushing it back, that means the Warriors get to see what's out there when free agency starts, and they get to work through this weekend to see if there are still moves to be made. Just to remind everyone, the Chris Paul's contract is non-guaranteed, so technically the Warriors have the ability to guarantee the full thing or any part of it to help execute a trade. It's considered a trade chip to allow them to execute uneven trades. And so it's really valuable for them to be able to both look at what it looks like if they were to involve that in a trade or to not involve that in a trade. Honestly, I could see them executing great trades and coming into next year's roster without having to use Chris Paul's contract by waiving him. Maybe they compile Wiggins and a pick or some prospects or something, and they get a star player they want that way. Or maybe they use the full MLE if they're able to do it that way and do so. There's multiple things they can do with or without Chris Paul's contract. But what it tells me, by pushing back the guarantee date, they are maintaining the option and they are actively looking at everything that's out there right now. And I think from a Warriors fan perspective, that's really what you want to hear at this point. What you want to hear is they're hitting the ground. They're looking at what deals are out there. They're looking at what their options are trade-wise. They want to improve this roster. They do not want to come back next year with the same roster, Lindy Waters, Quentin Post, and maybe a new veteran minimum. They're looking to shake this thing up, and I think that's the right idea. And so positive to hear that, excited to see what's coming around. And so that takes us to kind of the number one trade target at this point, the player whose name has been mentioned the most throughout the saga, Paul George. So some news to go over. As of midday Friday, Brian Windhorst is still reporting the Clippers are not willing to give Paul George a max contract. The report suggests they want him to take something similar to what Kawhi got, 3 years, 50-some a year. Definitely I understand where they're coming from on that. At the same time, he wants a 4-year contract, and it's been reported from multiple sources. The Warriors are willing to give it to him. So this whole thing moves on. Yeah, man. Look, to me, I don't want to call it Paul George or bust, but I don't think anything happens until this Paul George situation gets resolved. As of right now, he has another 24 hours to decide whether he wants to opt in or opt out. If he opts in, technically he's a Clippers player for next year. He might be able to force a trade to the Warriors. He might not. If he opts out, he's a free agent, and it's going to be very difficult for the Warriors to get him. They don't have cap space. They could maybe do a sign-in trade, but it just becomes so much more confusing. So as far as I'm concerned, the next 24 hours are all about Paul George. Let's see if he is going to opt in or opt out. As far as I'm concerned, among veteran players, he's about as good a fit as you could get around Steph Curry and Draymond Green. Obviously, superstar wing, probably the best shooting wing outside of Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson in the league. Maybe even on some days can be better than those guys. Definitely takes more threes and makes them in a slightly higher percentage than KD. Not the mid-range shooter KD is, but KD is also maybe the best of all time at that. He can play on ball. He can play off ball. Very good defensive player. Um, I think he's a perfect fit for the Warriors system. I think if the Warriors were able to cobble up the assets to get him, it's a no-brainer, even if it costs you Clay. Yeah, that'll hurt a little bit, but Steph, PG, and Draymond, that is the foundation of a team that could win the championship. They will not win it by themselves. The team would then have to make sure to have enough players, let's say under the age of 30, let's say guys who are in that 27 to 25 to 30-ish range, guys who are a little more athletic, who can supplement those guys. But I don't really know how the Warriors get themselves back into contention without swinging for a legitimate all-star caliber player like Paul George. So I think while we're sitting here and we're waiting and it's a little annoying and, maybe they should be looking at something else. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're gauging all their options. Among players who are rumored to be available with their fit considered, it's hard to do better than Paul George, in my opinion, even with his age. I don't know how many years of Steph and Draymond you're really going to get. You might only get 2. Well, Paul George fits that timeline, so you might as well go for it. And then additionally, Anthony Slater and Sam Amick reported this morning that the Denver Nuggets also sniffed around for Paul George. According to them, they offered Michael Porter Jr., Zeke Naji, who would be cap filler at that point, and the Clippers wanted additional draft picks on top of that, which supposedly made Denver walk away. All right. Here's how I read that. There's a couple things to break down here. One, that says to me that the trade offers the Clippers are getting for Paul George are not particularly amazing. I like Michael Porter Jr. a lot. I would trade for him in a lot of contexts as far as the Warriors, but Paul George is a vastly superior player. When you consider the fact that MPJ has a massive contract, like a $35 to $40 million contract, you would assume you'd have to attach stuff onto that to sweeten the deal to get a superior player in Paul George. Only Paul George is older, and Paul George only has 1 year left on his contract, and he's demanding a 4-year extension. All that stuff probably suppresses his trade value. That's probably why Denver's sitting here going, hey, man, I'll give you a 26-year-old rising star. He hasn't made all-star. He may never make all-star, but he's a damn good player, and he can shoot it as well as anyone in the league, Michael Porter Jr., but I'm not giving you my picks in the future. Not for a guy Paul George's age, not with the amount of money we're going to have to give him over the next 4 years. No, MPJ is enough. So the way I'm seeing it is, he might be a Denver Nugget today if Denver threw 2 first-round picks on top of that, but they're not going to do that as of right now. And what does that mean for the Warriors? I don't know. It means to me that the Clippers probably have not been overwhelmed by any of the Warriors offers. I'm assuming the Warriors haven't put a bunch of draft picks on top of it. I don't know if they've made Kuminga available. Maybe they should, maybe they shouldn't. But if I'm the Warriors, I'm trying to see if I can get this done without one of the following. I'm either giving you a draft pick or I'm giving you Kuminga, but I'm not giving you both. Maybe at the end of the day, they're going to have to give both. But the way I'm looking at it is, he is older. You are going to have to pay him a lot of money. Giving up Kuminga, he is a young player. He does have a lot of runway. He could get a lot better. That's a part of your future you're giving up in exchange for him. Or you can give up a pick who can also be in your future. But if you give up both, you kind of have nothing at the end of the rope. So I don't know. I don't know where the final price on this stuff stands, but that's kind of how I'm looking at the whole thing. I don't know. It's tough to say. Maybe the Clippers end up getting a little more than what they want, but right now it doesn't sound like they're getting particularly impressive offers. Doesn't sound like they're giving Paul George the contract he wants, and it doesn't sound like Paul George is happy about that. So this whole thing feels like a leverage stalemate at this point. We'll see where it lands. We'll see where the final thing goes. Windhorse out here reporting that, the Warriors would be Paul George's favorite option if he leaves LA. I mean, I get it. He's from LA. The Bay is pretty close. He fits their style of play perfectly, has a relationship with the main guys there. Pretty obvious fit, but can they get it done? I don't know. We'll see. We'll find out probably over the next 48 hours. I don't know how long the Paul George thing is actually going to drag out. It feels like it's the first domino to fall. Either the Warriors get him, or he stays in LA, or he goes to Philly or something like that. But we find out pretty quickly. And if the Warriors don't get him, then it's on to the next one. And, we'll figure it out from there. The other part of it to me that's interesting is the Nuggets shopping MPJ. And I'll get to that in 1 second. But before we get to that, I got to tell you about Prize Picks. Prize Picks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with more than 5 million members. It's the most fun and exciting way to get in on the action while your favorite sports and players. You just pick more or less on 2 or more player reads with a shot to win 100x your cash. Prize Picks is the most fun I've had winning money all basketball season. I played basically the Steph Curry over all year. That worked out for me. I took the James Harden under all year. That worked out for me too. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, an enormous selection of players and stat types is what makes Prize Picks the #1 fantasy app. Download the app today and use the code LIGHTYEARS on your first deposit for $100 match on your deposit. Once again, promo code LIGHTYEARS. And then let me talk about our friends at Unified. Whether you're a world-class athlete or a podcaster like me, we all understand the importance of mental and physical well-being and proper recovery for top-notch performance. Unified Healing is a new and super innovative global network of wellness centers powered by the Energy Enhancement System, or the EES system. If you haven't heard of the EES system, you'll want to listen up. This technology promotes wellness, deep relaxation, purification, and rejuvenation. Whether you're here in the Bay Area or hundreds of locations across the globe, access to the center is easy and affordable. Interested in experiencing the EES system technology for yourself? Go to unifiedhealing.com/lightyears to learn more and find a center near you. That's UNIFYD healing.com/lightyears. So going back to the Nuggets, it's interesting. They are trying to, or they offered Michael Porter Jr. Part of it is just Paul George is a phenomenal player and we have a chance to get him. You're going to have to offer something of value. If the Warriors were to get Paul George, they're going to have to give up something of value, something that you guys want to keep. It might be Wiggins. It might be Kuminga. It might be draft picks. They're going to have to give up something that you want. Hopefully not everything, but at least something. The interesting thing about the Nuggets is earlier this week, their GM basically said they're not going to be able to keep KCP. KCP, excellent 3-and-D wing. All reports are suggesting he's going to get 20 plus million. I get it. He's like the perfect fourth option glue guy on a championship team. He defends the best wing on the other team, best guard especially, and he'll hit some open shots. He was pretty important for them when they won a title overall, and I think every team could use a guy like KCP. Like, I'd love him on the Warriors, for example. He's much more consistent than Andrew Wiggins. He might not have the ceiling of Wiggins, but he's significantly more consistent game in, game out. They're not going to re-sign KCP because of the second apron and tax acclamations. Now, we can argue whether that's right or wrong, but it seems to be a trend around the league. Teams are treating the second apron like a hard cap. They are having to make tough decisions, and Denver already given Jokic the supermax. Is their franchise. They're going to pay Jamal Murray a huge contract, and they've given Aaron Gordon, who's very important to them, a long-term deal kind of in line with Draymond's contract. They're going to have to make tough decisions here. So it seems like they're going to let KCP go. And the other domino in this is MPJ got a max contract when he was on his rookie deal. And as good as he's been, I don't think anyone can say he's been a max player. He's a very good player. But I think if the Denver Nuggets had to do it over again and knew that the new CBA was coming, they probably don't give him all that money. They probably hardball him to a smaller number that gives them more wiggle room. But that's where they're stuck. That's the reality of it. So I think not only are they looking to get rid of is the wrong. Not only are they looking to lose KCP, who's excellent, they're probably looking at MPJ, who's making $35 million next year, and it scales up to $40 million in a couple of years. And they're wondering, can we trade him? Can we either trade him for an out and out star like Paul George, which, I get it, right? It's a very smart move if you can pull it off. Or can we trade him for a couple smaller contracts, get a couple role players for him, fill out our depth? It would hurt to lose having a shooter like that, but he is it's hard to have three max guys. It just is. You're paying Jokic over 50. Murray's at 36. He's going to get 40 to 50 in a year's time. Hard to have three guys on that salary unless they're three absolute monsters. So I could see them looking at MPJ as a trade chip to move the other way. And that got me thinking, what would you think? Let's say the Warriors don't get Paul George. I still think that's the most likely outcome of this whole thing. Not news, but like he's from LA. They own his contract right now. They probably have the most leverage in this entire thing. So until I see something that indicates it's changed, I am assuming he's going to stay there. So then the Warriors got to move on. How would you feel about Wiggins and Moses Moody for MPJ? Tell me in the chat what you think of that. Let me make my case before you guys comment. Undoubtedly, MPJ is overpaid. I think Wiggins is potentially overpaid too, just because of his consistency. If he performed like he did in 2022, great contract. If he performs like he does in 2023 and 2024, it's a bad contract, which is why the Warriors have had issues moving him. All that said, he makes 26, MPJ makes 35. Moses Moody makes 6 next year, gets you up to basically a salary match. So there you go. You're trading basically a defensive wing and a young wing you don't play very much for an offensive wing. Now, MPJ is not a perfect player by any means, but he might be the best shooting wing outside of Klay Thompson. And I'm talking about like pure shooter operating off of screens in general. Over the last 2 years, he's shooting 40.5% on 7 threes a game. I mean, he can get as hot as anyone, and he's doing it as a third option. On the Warriors, in theory, he'd move up to second option. They'd use him a lot like they use Klay Thompson. It's not Paul George. It's not Lauri Markkanen. But is MPJ a little underrated because he's kind of cast into the third option role in Denver? I could make the case he is. I could make the case that if he got more shots, he might have a Lauri Markkanen type explosion. You guys remember how like Lauri was in Cleveland? He was a third option and like, yeah, he could shoot, but he kind of felt like some games he was good, others he wasn't. No one was sitting here going, that is a franchise guy. He gets to Utah, they get him more touches, and we find out, yeah, man, this is a guy who should be getting, 18, 20 shots a game. This guy should be averaging 20. You should be building your offense around. Are we sure MPJ is not like that? Are we sure MPJ can't be the next Lauri Markkanen, goes to a situation where he gets more touches and 17 points per game and 7 threes a game turn into 23, 24 points per game and 10 3-point attempts a game? I mean, he's tailor fit for the Warriors offense. Again, not my first choice move. My first choice move would be something like Paul George, but I can see a lot of logic in this move. And I think Denver would do it. I think Denver would view the ability to get a defensive wing to replace KCP and a young wing to develop in Moses Moody as a cheaper way to replenish what they've lost. I don't think they want to lose MPJ shooting. He's super valuable for them, but contracts are what they are. Lastly, on the MPJ front, he turns 26 tomorrow, So for as much as people like to write off upside there, he's a young player. Why can't he take another leap? Wiggins had his all-star season where everyone thought he kind of turned a corner at 27. Jaylen Brown, who had been aligned for years for performances in the playoffs, won finals MVP at 28 years old. I can keep going down the line. Even Lauri Markkanen, 25, 26 was when he got that trade to Utah, and that's where he went from being, this is a nice player to, wow, this is a guy you build around. I don't know. If the Warriors can't land a proven star, I'm not convinced. I kind of think trading for someone like MPJ, who has all the offensive talent in the world as a shooter, might not be the worst move, and he might turn into an all-star for the Warriors. Last item to note is on said Andrew Wiggins. So why am I mentioning him in trade so much? Because it's continually reported they're looking to move on from him. Um, Whether you believe he can be the player he was in 2022, or you think that was a flash in the pan and who he's been in other years of his career is more in line with who he is, it does feel like the Warriors are looking at the situation as, man, if we can just get someone who's a little more consistent or just quite frankly shake it up, let's do it. And they are paying him a lot of money. So, maybe they're looking for something more consistent. All that's moot. What came out today is he is pulling out of the Olympics for Team Canada because the Warriors do not want to let him play in it. More specifically, it appears that he has a slight ankle tweak and the Warriors are playing hardball. You can look at it multiple ways. Some people are saying it's a mutual decision. Others are saying it's hardball. I'm not sure, but here's what I'm taking from it. I think the Warriors are at a point with him where they're like, no, we're not risking trade talks for you to go injure yourself in the Olympics. I don't know if they're going to trade him. There's a very real scenario that all of this ends with him coming back next year and they work on seeing what they can do to unlock him, make him more consistent, try to get back to 2022 Wiggins. All these things are like, it's a realistic possibility. It would not be my preferred outcome. I really do think they need to shake it up in a meaningful way, not just like add a backup point guard and like a new bench player. I think they actually need to shake up the starting lineup in a meaningful way. But with all that said, what the Warriors doing here is telling me is they don't care if they look bad. They don't care if Wiggins is upset. They're not going to let something stop them from exploring the option. They're looking at this entire situation and going, Andrew, I know you want to play, but we can't risk it. We're actively in trade talks revolving around you. We may trade you, we may not, but we're not going to have this thing blow up because you broke your hand, you broke a bone in your foot, whatever it may be. Hopefully none of that happens to any player during the Olympics, but you get what I'm saying. They're playing hardball here. They're kind of being ruthless about it. They're kind of like, I know you want to play in the Olympics, but contractually, given your physical situation, we have the right to stop it. And so that's what they're going to do. To me, this is a departure from the Bob Myers era. And I'm not saying Bob was the only reason the Warriors were so player friendly and soft, but like Bob left last year. So I'll call it the Bob Myers era. I couldn't have seen the Warriors doing this move 2 to 3 years ago. It does feel like we're in a new era with management where they're a little more pragmatic, a little more cold, a little more calculated, and a little more just kind of like, I don't want to say professional, but a little more like, hey, man, this is what you signed. We're going to do it this way. I don't care what you want, that sort of thing. And I don't really have a problem with it because it is what it is. Like every player signs a contract that says they could be traded, but that's where we're at now. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting. You guys tell me in the comments what you think, if that's interesting. All right. We'll be back as soon as we get some updates, maybe as soon as 2 hours or maybe tomorrow morning.